And welcome to Madden and Benz Unfiltered. It is brought to you by Bella Construction, myBellaRoof.com. Go there for all of your roofing, siding, and home needs. They've worked on my place. They've worked on Mark's place. We love the fact that Bella Construction is sponsoring us as we go through the football season. And the Steelers love the first 3 weeks of the football season, not so much right now, dropping their second in a row on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys. 20-17, the final score. They give up 14 points in the fourth quarter. The vaunted defense, not so vaunted, and the offense and the quarterback taking a step back from what we saw when it peaked, such as it was 2 weeks ago against the Chargers. Mark, as we talked about during the podcast, you're a lot more looking at the offense. I'm with you. I thought the offense had lots of flaws. I'm more focused on the defense for all the yards they allowed. And basically relying, I think, on Dak Prescott mistakes to keep this game close.
I will say that the defense sagged badly in the fourth quarter. But it wasn't because Dallas had this great possession edge and had the Steelers defense on the field the whole night. Dallas only had the ball for 32 minutes and 30 seconds. I think the Steelers defense sagged under the weight of the expectations of having to be perfect, because that's the only way the Steelers can win the game. And I think that got to him. Plus, Dak, for all his mistakes, made a tremendous throw on fourth down to win the game. So I don't hold the Steelers defense blameless, Tim. But that offense is just so cowardly. You look at their very first possession. They had 3rd and 8 from the Dallas 28. They were down 3-0. And they handed the ball to a practice squad running back and just laid up for the field goal, but it was just a reminder with an exclamation point that it's a cowardly offense, that Old Yeller ain't no dog. I mean, of all the weird things that happened last night, that wasn't weird. It was expected, which makes it all the weirder still.
The fact that they did it, well, twice, honestly, during the course of the season, most memorably in that very first game against the Falcons, they did something similar, but at least they were trying to get on the edge of field goal range. They were well within field goal range by the time they did what they did on that first possession this time around. And again, like you said, it was to a 4th-string running back. So, why not attack the sticks? Why not try to keep the drive going? But then I laugh at it. I make fun of it. And, of course, the Cowboys did the same thing in the fourth quarter, but their play call under roughly the same design worked like a charm.
Yeah, and, you can criticize Dak because he made some bad mistakes. I mean, the interceptions were just awful.
Right.
But at least he's trying to make plays. At least the scheme doesn't handcuff him. And when you try to make plays, sooner or later, maybe it comes good like it did for him last night.
Well, that's a good point, Mark, and I really didn't frame it that way when we were talking on the podcast before, but that's a good way to look at it because that's an offense that was not living in its fears. It was not afraid to have its quarterback turn the ball over, and they got 455 yards or 445 yards in total offense with one good receiver and a good tight end and a mismatch of running backs. The ghost of Zeke Elliott is thrown in there somewhere. It's not like Dak has been given overwhelming weapons this season, that much more than Pickens and Freiermuth working with Fields, and yet the Steelers are acting like, they're completely handcuffed by their own talent that they themselves have procured.
Yeah, and let's not forget the Steelers' offense was facing a defense crippled by the loss of DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons.
Right,
and they
exactly.
still wouldn't go after it. It's just like the Steelers had so many edges last night, Tim. They won the turnover battle 3-1. They blocked the field goal. Parsons and Lawrence were out. Dak made these egregious mistakes in the red zone. And the Steelers still couldn't score enough points to win because they didn't try to. Like, they just wouldn't put their boot on the Cowboys' neck despite given opportunities. Now, would they have been successful in doing so? I don't know. But again, Dallas got rewarded for trying to make plays. And Tim, it's even on the defensive side of the ball for the Steelers. Where, oh, where has Micah Fitzpatrick gone? Where, oh, where can he be? He's been involved in 0 turnovers in the last 17 games. He's playing center field. He's making tackles. He's deployed in ultra-conservative fashion. But, Tim, for a guy playing center field, I saw the one guy just race by him last night for a long game. So he ain't even doing that right.
Yeah, I don't know if that was on Jackson or on him. It's kind of similar to how it went down between Porter and him in the Charger
Tim,
game.
he's the guy in center field.
Yeah, he didn't get over in time, right. And I keep hearing all this stuff from the defensive backs and from Tomlin and from Terrell Austin about communication, how they're not communicating. Well, they were communicating great for 3 weeks when no one knew each other's name. The first 3 weeks, everybody was brand new to each other, and the communication in the secondary appeared to be flawless. So why has it changed? And I'll give you the answer to my own hypothetical. The answer is it hasn't changed. And this whole stuff about communication, when you hear secondaries talk about that, they use that as a blanket cover excuse because they have no blanket coverage. They use that as an excuse when they get picked apart by better quarterbacks, smarter quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks. Flacco is a smart veteran. Dak is a smart veteran, and they got picked apart. Maybe the same thing would have happened with Herbert if Herbert was playing at full capacity a couple weeks ago.
Well, Tim, I'll say this. Communication breakdown, it's always the same. You feel like you're having a nervous breakdown. It'll drive you insane. Yeah, what you said. I mean, again, I think you're leaning a little hard on the defense, which was also crippled by all their edge rushers going out the game. I mean, they were down to their, fifth-string edge rusher behind Watt?
Yeah, because Leal went out.
Highsmith was out.
Yep.
We all went out. Herbig went out. Herbig's too small to play very much. He needs to be a pass rushing specialist playing just a handful of downs a game. The more he plays, the more he's going to get hurt. And teams just run right at him, too. They just, forget about the pass when he's in there and just hand the ball off and head right toward Herbig. Not as much last night as happened the week before.
What about George Pickens? And again, some of his antics, the eye black, I'm always bleeping open, and he wasn't as open as he normally is last night. Then on top of that, the game's over, and he grabs some guy and throws him down by his face mask. There was a route that he ran where it looked like he was frustrated before and didn't make a hard break out of it, and the timing was off in the pattern as a result. I wasn't impressed with him at all last night, despite him trying to draw attention to himself with whatever that was he was wearing.
Everything you said is true. And we all knew he was a dink the minute he set foot in Pittsburgh, right? I'm not sure I blame him.
Well,
he's getting wasted. Connor Hayward is a bigger part of the offense than him. Okay, and he's, wants an extension at the end of the year. His numbers are going to stink. He's wrong, but I understand. He shouldn't do it, but I understand.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. When you
imagine you're a high-tech receiver like Pickens, and you get drafted into this Stone Age offense, which is getting more conservative in his years here, which is getting worse. It doesn't matter who the coordinator is. Tim, this Arthur Smith offense, it's the same as the Canada offense, just with more tight ends. It's scared, and it's conservative.
One thing they definitely do that I disliked about the Canada offense, and I feel like Arthur Smith's offense, honestly, actually does it with more intent, and that is they hunt, peck, and probe and try to set things up for the second half by way of what they're doing in the first half. And they've admitted that without flat out admitting it a couple of times in press conferences this year. But they've just got to coach the first 30 minutes like the first 30 minutes are an independent ecosystem a little bit here. It can't all just be about setting up for the second half because they're either keeping games close that shouldn't be close or they're falling too far behind like they did against the Colts.
They need to accept what the NFL is, which is score more and faster. And if they don't have the personnel to do that, then that's on Omar Khan. And that's on Mike Tomlin for wanting games to be this way. And by the way, how excruciating are these games? How zero fun are they to watch? Tim, I feel like we're in week 12 already.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you saw during the course of the games yesterday, even going back to Thursday night, which was a shootout going into overtime, You actually saw quite a few big plays this week. We spent all this time talking about how there's no big plays in football, and you need it. Mel Kiper was talking about changing the rules so you couldn't have the cover 2 shell and all that, the 2 safety shell. But you had a 90-yard pass from Trevor Lawrence that went for a touchdown. There was a couple of 50-plus yarders from Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams had a couple.
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry had the big 51-yard play. There were tons of big plays in the Bengals game. I think Jamar Chase had a 74-yarder. There were 50-plus yarders all over football yesterday. So it's not impossible. The shells aren't impregnable. It's just the Steelers feel like that's a convenient excuse to play the way that they want to play.
You know how you make plays like that, Tim? You try them.
Right, especially to Pickens.
Yeah, and again, I'm not condoning Pickens being a big baby, whether it's running the lazy route or grabbing a guy by the face mask or the eye black tape that said I'm always effing open. But I understand. I mean, he is just being dumbed down. He is being wasted. Tim, the number 1 receiver and number 1 running back on this team don't have a touchdown yet 5 games in between them.
I know. Yeah. That's alarming, and it's, I think, setting the course for the rest of the season. And we'll see if things change if Russell Wilson gets in there. You would endorse that, right, if they went to Wilson for the Vegas game?
I think now it's pretty obvious if he's ready. Fields has run out of steam, and he stopped winning.
That's the thing, is that you no longer have the hot hand part of the explanation. This would be like what a lot of people were forecasting would have been the case if Mason Rudolph had started from Jump Street. Like, eventually he was going to get to a point where the magic ran out, and that happened against Buffalo in the playoffs. Well, maybe they would have seen a Buffalo in week 4 of his starting tenure whenever he would have been inserted into the lineup. So I think it's kind of akin to that what we're seeing with Fields right now. If they're looking for an excuse, they've got it. I thought we saw an evolution of Fields to the point where he was like managing the game the first 2 weeks. Then he did a lot to win it against the Chargers. It wasn't really his fault that they lost it against the Colts, but now the whole offense stunk, and he was part of the problem, and they lost. So all the calculus has all gone in the opposite direction for Fields here in the last 2 weeks.
Tim, I'll simplify it. I think he's a great athlete who's capable of making the occasional great play, especially with his legs, but mostly he just stinks. I mean, he was rotten for 3 years in Chicago. I mean, did he forget how to be bad? Doesn't look that way to me. In fact, it's all coming back to him, Tim.
The legs part of it is the big angle about putting Wilson in, because you do have to be ready for a guy who's taken 100 sacks over the last 2 years behind that offensive line, which, as you pointed out, no Parsons, no Lawrence. That's a team that had 8 sacks coming into this game, 4 of them from those guys, and those guys weren't in it, and they allowed 3, and if it weren't for Fields' legs, they would have allowed more. So Wilson getting away from a pass rush like Max Crosby next week, if you were to see him, that does concern me.
See, Tim, we never see the Steelers as they really are. And I'm using the generic we, but when they were 3-0, they weren't that good. I heard some of the stooges of me just saying, this team can beat anybody. This team could beat Kansas City. This team's a legitimate contender. No, it's a 500-y team like it always has been. And sometimes you take a weird path to 500, like by winning your first 3 games, but that's where they're headed. This team never was any good. We overrated their early moments. We've overrated a lot of the team's components. It's not a good team.
What'd you make of the rest of the league, Mark, particularly what happened in the division? Obviously, Cleveland is a mess. They insist they're sticking with Deshaun Watson. I don't know how much longer they can do that. And then the Baltimore-Cincinnati game, like, do you think the Bengals and Browns are both done at this point, and it's just about the Ravens and if the Steelers can hang on, or do the Ravens just coast, do you think?
That's one advantage the Steelers do have. It's a 2-team race now, period. Because, forget about the records for the Browns and Bengals. Look at them. You can flip them over. They're done on this side. They just had it. And I bet Baltimore gets Devontae Adams, by the way. That seems to be the most logical landing spot.
Well, I think the Jets is the most logical, but I don't know if
not now that they've lost. Not now that they're 2-3. I don't know if when a receiver gets traded, he wants to go and dig out.
I can see that. I think he might have the ego enough to think that he's the magic elixir that would change all that, and maybe Rodgers thinks that too. But I think they need a lineman more than they need a wide receiver, to be frank.
Rodgers is washed up. He's
Mhm.
awful. He was awful. I watched a lot of that game. Tim, I watched Rodgers on one TV throwing 3 picks. I watched Tottenham Hotspur on the other blowing a 2-0 lead to Brighton. It was magnificent.
Wait, that's the stadium
that come up and
that was the stadium they were in. So
yeah. The Spurs won the road. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It must be something in the turf. It's Spurs Stadium. But yeah, I heard Rodgers had a nervous breakdown before the game, Tim, when he was flying over to England. He looked out the window and realized the earth wasn't flat.
Yeah, I think he does look done to me. He can't move away, and he does not have the offensive line blocking for him. And yeah, they are lacking weapons.
We just have so much going on. We got Howard Stern interviewing Kamala Harris. Is she going to be the new kielbasa queen?
Did you see what Steve Byrne, our buddy, tweeted about that?
No, but I'll steal it. What do you do?
He said, "Boy, I'm looking forward to the interview. Are you going to put her on a speaker?"
Yeah, I what about the Sibian? Go all the way.
I was thinking the same thing. Well, I mean,
based
on how that interview is going,
is he going to throw cold cuts at her ass?
I don't think she's going to need either of those options, Mark. I'm sure the interview will be just fine.
The idea that this guy is interviewing a presidential candidate just shows how he's betrayed what he once was, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what I remember of listening to Stern, like when I was listening to him on the radio in New York, and to think that the dawn would come up in a day where basically he's going to interview a presidential candidate and she's going to get more softballs than when she was on MSNBC. I don't even know what to make of that.
Well, he used to hate them, and now he's one of them.
Yeah. Well, what else is going on? You said are you watching something? You watching The Penguin by any chance?
No, I'm not. I watched just part of the first episode. I'm finishing the new season of The Bear right now.
I lost track of that one like midway through the first season. Is it still good?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'll tell you why it's a tough one. You have to buy into the importance to these people of the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as I care about my job, I don't care about my job nearly as much as they care about the friggin' restaurant.
Will you start caring about your job more that the Penguins are starting?
No. I'm looking forward, but I just think it's the same team and same approach as last year, basically. I'm looking forward to watching Sid and Gino chase milestones. I think that's some nice residue from having kept them around. I think the first 10 games are going to tell a big tale because they play 7 of those on the road, including a 4-game swing through Western Canada, and another game on top of that at Toronto. I have questions about their goaltending. I have questions about their defense. I have questions about their bottom 6. I have questions about their power play. Other than that, Tim, I'm really optimistic.
I have lots of questions, too. I also have lots of questions about the commitment to mixing in youth, which we are being told will happen. I want to see exactly how that manifests on the opening night lineup. And as you pointed out,
who told you that? Who said that?
We are being told. I'll use the collective we as well. We have been told by, not only through the Penguins media and fans that, this is coming, but it's been hinted at from management that they want to get younger and faster, right? They said they want to get younger and faster. So let's see it. And it's not just about who makes it out of the gates on opening night, Mark. It's sticking with those guys. And as you pointed out, not burying them on the bench if they misplay a puck in the first period.
Well, Koivunen's already in the minors, and I think McGroarty will be too later this afternoon, and that's okay. I'd rather see them in the top 6 getting minutes in a role they need to grow into at Wilkes. Ponomarev got hurt. That'll be their excuse to get rid of him. Carlson got healthy. That'll be the excuse to send Brunick back to juniors. And the end result is they will not be noticeably younger one bit. They will not have force-fed it at all. The only thing I like about their bottom 6 is that there's more than 6 of them, and they are bigger. Like you got 6'5", 6'4", 6'3", and plus that freaking Puljujärvi. His nickname got to be Slabhead. My God, he looks like he stepped off Mount Rushmore. I'm not one to talk to him, but that's a big head. That is bigger than Casperitis, and that's something.
I thought that once or twice walking in the locker room. I'm like, wow, that is Casper-esque, and I don't say that lightly.
There was a photo one time that Steve Lattin, the equipment manager, had in his room. It was me talking to Casperitis with John Welday. Remember him, the strength coach?
Yes. Speaking of heads, everybody said he looked like a South Park character.
Well, and he was in the background, and somebody captioned it 3/4 of Mount Rushmore.
I think it was Yager. Wasn't it Yager who said of Welday, he just pointed at a South Park character? He said, Welday.
Yeah, there's been some big heads go through that locker room, Tim, both literally and figuratively.
Real quick before we get to comments, Pitt, how long do you think they stay undefeated? Cal, Syracuse at home, then a road game against SMU. Some people are pointing that as the trip-up game. Usually with Pitt, it's much like with Tomlin. It's not supposed to be the trip-up game. That's the trip-up game. It usually comes before that.
I pride myself in not following Pitt, but I'm happy for like Donovan McMillan, who's a fan of the program, the safety who I think is going to play in the league and do very well. This Holstein kid right now is better than Pickett ever was. They're going to have a hard time keeping him with NIL, but they have to, Tim. They have to pay him whatever he wants. Find a way, because if he leaves, that undermines the credibility of the program for years to come. Will affect the guys they get out of high school, from other teams, transfers. It'll just kill them. So they have to keep that kid. He's unbelievable with the arm, with the legs. As far as where Pitt lines up, I bet they still finish like no better than 8-4. That they lose 4 out of their last 7 and are in the middle of the ACC pack. But Holstein could surprise. He certainly has so far.
Let's get to some comments from Mike. From ownership down, the Steelers are run horribly. They play outdated and scared. When you're doing a toss play on 3rd and 8, you are doing nothing but being terrified to throw the ball. And again, it was the first quarter. I know they had given up a field goal drive before that, but it's the first quarter. As Dallas proved, you can live with a turnover or two. Ben made turnovers, okay? You've got to live with the option of coming back from them.
I wish football would get back to the Terry Bradshaw days. Terry Bradshaw just wanted to make plays. He wasn't afraid of interceptions. He was trying to make plays. Interceptions now, especially with the Steelers, are treated like they'll give the whole roster syphilis. It's just sometimes you got to take a chance, and the Steelers don't.
Jay says, hey, Mark, who do you think the Steelers will draft this upcoming year? Yeah, that's right. Let's start looking at the draft right now. Although, hey, if they keep playing this way, maybe they'll find themselves in the top 10. They can get a quarterback. Maybe they'll get Eli Holstein. Maybe they can talk him out of school. I think he has to stay one more year, though. They might have to wait on that one.
That'd be great, Tim. They'd only have to switch parking lots.
I heard that.
Where have I heard that
before? Tristan says, I agree with Mark. We see this team differently than how they are. No weapons to throw to. Najee really lacks explosive ability. Match that all with scared play calling. It's not good. Yet Najee again last night, let me get to the numbers here. 14 attempts, 42 yards. That's a 3-yard average. They only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. 92 yards rushing on 26 attempts. They're running as much as they're passing, and they're only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. They didn't have a single run, Mark, and this is with field scrambling too. They didn't have a single run over 8 yards last night.
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys had 15 plays of 10 yards or more.
Yeah, they had, let's see here, 4 pass receptions at least of over 25 yards, and then the Dowdle touchdown pass of 22.
Maybe you're right about the D, Tim. Maybe the D does suck. And I'm just covering up for it because I'm such a big TJ Watt fan.
Well, you're known for that. And yeah, the Herbig thing, I was getting into with somebody today about Herbig a little bit. He's a great spot pass rusher, but you can't put an outside linebacker in just to play the run on first and second down, and then put an outside linebacker in on third down for pass rush situations. Those guys have to play almost every snap.
Yeah, well, I mean, Watt didn't have a very impactful fourth quarter, but he was great up till then. It was like the whole defense, I don't want to say collapse, that's too strong a term. I mean, look how they look. How about that play by Roberts where he did like the LeVar leap and forced the fumble?
Yeah, that was a great play. I thought it was going to be another moment where they got a red zone turnover. That was what I was saying about the defense, kind of giving them the yards, but then making the plays at the end. Roberts had one. Watt and Herbig had one. Dante Jackson had that interception. I have no idea what Dak was doing on that. And the deep pass that he threw down the middle that Porter intercepted after the penalty, it was still a first down. They just lost yardage. He didn't have to make that throw. So for as much as Dak did right, there were a lot of turnovers where I was walking away shaking my head saying, what was he thinking on those?
Both teams deserve to lose. If you want to put it succinctly, both teams deserve to lose. It was the same somebody had to win. But Tim, again, entertainment value. I watched almost the entirety of Bengals and Ravens. It was like the teams were playing different sports. Comparing the Cincy Baltimore game to Pittsburgh and Dallas was like comparing champagne to flat tap. It's just amazing the disparity across the league, how some games are great, but most aren't.
This is one from Eric who says, what's wrong with Roman Wilson? Does he have the plague? He wouldn't help this abhorrent offense, but why is he always a healthy scratch? Now, I think he would help. I think he could help. Let me put it to you that way. I don't know what he could do because we haven't seen him yet. And it's this typical, oh my God, he's a rookie. We can't put him in. What if he makes a mistake? Well, what if he makes a play? Because Jefferson, Austin, and Miller sure aren't. And God forbid those guys should lose a snap or two to a guy that you drafted in the third round.
Tim, let's be honest. The way this offense is, it almost doesn't matter who the wide receivers are. This is the Matt Canada offense, but with more tight ends. Like you talked about Najee before. First off, when I hear people say Najee doesn't have that burst, gee, no kidding. I bet they didn't notice that at the combine and in college and in all the film he put down. They knew what they were getting when they got Najee. And since he has no burst, why you keep running that toss play, my brother? He don't have the acceleration. He can't get past the first guy. He's not Amos Zaraway.
Josh says every broadcast starts the same. Graphic shows Tomlin has never had a losing season. It doesn't show overall record playoff history, just the regular season. Tomlin's method is outdated. The game is passing him by.
And not just him. The game has passed Tomlin by tactically. The game has passed the organization by in terms of roster assembly.
Bill says the only thing that Fields can do better than Pickett is run. Otherwise, this offense is just as bad as it was last year. Still burning all of our second half timeouts early lies squarely on Tomlin, but don't tell that to the Stooges. One timeout thing, Mark.
Yeah, like when they had 12 men on the field and had to burn the timeout on defense.
Is that why they did that? And you talking about the last timeout,
yeah.
Or was that earlier? Or was that earlier in the fourth quarter?
No, earlier. They burned their second timeout of the second half because they had 12 men on the field on defense. They did it before they got penalized.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that one.
I got to be honest. I thought they would have been better off taking the penalty.
Yeah, that sometimes you are. So you could hold on to.
I would trade 5 yards to keep that timeout. Looking back, for sure.
How big would that extra timeout have been on the drive that Dallas had? Once they were trying to figure out who should call timeout and who shouldn't, like it became clear the Steelers should. That's part of the reason why I would have saved the 10 seconds when they were offered the timeout before the runoff, when they were doing the review of Dak by the pylon. I would have used it then. And I sure as heck wouldn't have just used it for the sake of using it when I saw what they came out in on offense, unless, God forbid, they knew it was an instant matchup problem. But if you look at it, that's kind of what Dallas checked into. It's like what Minka Fitzpatrick said. They got into a man beater, and they beat us in man coverage. So, did Dallas get a look at what the Steelers were doing and change up during that timeout as well? Because they're allowed to do that too, You know
what's weird? See if you get this, Tim. I thought Dallas was terrible, and the Steelers were too, right? But at the moments of truth, Dallas was more composed. Dallas kind of got past having been awful and did just enough.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to say it, because they have enough big playability that they can make up for their mistakes. And, of course, the Steelers do not, and they don't want to test to see if they do. Before we go, Mark, hey, real quick, I was curious about this. I heard this on Sirius XM. Are you considering at all going to L.A. for those Motley Crue shows on the Sunset Strip that they're doing?
No, I would love to have, but the timing's not good. Yeah, they're doing the Hollywood takeover for all the old clubs they played, like the Whiskey and the Troubadour.
And there's
I forget
one
which
more.
ones exactly. Is the Troubadour
Yeah,
still? There's 3 of them. I'm not sure if the Troubadour's still open or not, but I know the Whiskey. I would love to go, but they only sold tickets to people from LA.
Oh, it was a local only show?
They wanted to be like a Sunset Strip reunion. Yeah, there's some way they filtered. I think it was only an on-site ticket sale, believe it or not. I think you had to go to the venue to buy a ticket at a window.
I heard about this, and
those are some stuff too. However, Tim, I am going to a full week of the residency in Vegas, April 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Luckily, the tickets only cost me over $3,000.
Mark Madden. Well, that's why he's working so hard for you right here on Madden Benz Unfiltered, and he signed his new contract, and you can listen to him daily.
That's where I'm at, Tim. If I can't spend the money on that now, what was the point of it all? And I say that very seriously.
No, I hear you. Everybody has to think the same way when they get closer to retirement age, when they're considering it. This is what you worked for. So if you worked for it, you might as well use it for what you want to use it on, especially if you don't have kids to worry about. So I'm thinking the same way 10 years ago.
I'm thinking about going to the Penguins game in Vegas, which I always do. Flying right from Vegas to Miami to go on the Monsters of Rock cruise.
You've done that a couple times, right?
I did a different one. I did the Rock Legends cruise. This is a little more metally, a little more Sunset Strippy. It's like L.A. Guns, Faster Pussycat, Winger with our buddy Reb, Stephen Piercy from Rat, and most importantly, UFO's original guitar player, Michael Schenker.
The Roxy is the other place, Mark. That's the other one.
So the Troubadour's still open.
Yeah, in fact, the Troubadour show, that's tonight. Yeah, that Troubadour show, and tickets are $1,300.
Face value or scalp?
That's what I'm seeing online right now. That looks like scalp value.
You know what?
That's
if I'd have known, I'd have gone. I'd have paid $1,300 to go to the Roxy.
It's Troubadour tonight for $1,300. Roxy 2 days from now for $1,300, and then the Whiskey A Go-Go is $1,900.
Wow.
And
okay,
then,
well, bad week, like I said. You know what I think they should do? I know that they're not on good terms now, probably never will be. They should bring Mick Mars back to play a little bit on those shows, but they won't.
Yeah, especially for and then they get into the residency after that. It looks like. You said, what date are you going, Mark? Whenever this
first week of April.
Yeah, there it is. I see it right there. Okay, yeah, that's when it starts.
Penguins are there in March.
Got it. All right.
Tim, I'm at the point. I'm doing whatever I want, whenever I want, until I run out of money. I'm going back to Vegas. The week the Steelers play Thursday, I'm going to Vegas that weekend.
That's
the F1 weekend. I might regret that.
Have you ever seen like an F1 race
no,
or
it's
Daytona?
It's tough to get around. Is my point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It really is. You gotta walk like crazy around it because they reroute all the streets and all that. And I've never seen F1, but I've seen Indy and I've seen Daytona. I don't know what an F1 race would be like.
Well, I'm not going to watch it. I don't care. I might stay downtown and just like go to the Circus Sportsbook. I like to once a year go to an NFL Sunday at the biggest sports book in Vegas. Either I like certain Resorts World. So, and Resorts World is off strip a little bit, so it would avoid the traffic. I might stay there. They have great donuts.
All right, so Mark is on today at 2. Make sure you listen to him and Tommy Radio to get
Sidney
you started.
Crosby at 4.
And Sidney Crosby at 4 o'clock to get a lot of hockey talk
yes.
today as well.
Yes.
Sidney Crosby at 4, and I know you run that back, if not later in that show, Mark, then certainly throughout the course of the week as you get ready for the hockey to start on Wednesday. Kyle Dubas talking today as well at 2:15. So Mark will talk about that. I'll write about that. Breakfast with the Benz. Thanks again to the folks at Bella Construction, myBellaRoof.com, Madden Benz Unfiltered.